Hello everyone, my name is Maria Vazquez. I am a VAPAE teaching artist. My pronouns are she, her, hers. For today's lesson, we are going to create our very own Lotería cards. The Lotería version that we'll be referring to today is one of the most popular and iconic versions, and that's El Gallo Lotería. And this specific version has 54 cards and 10 tablas. Tablas refers to your game board here, but what we'll be creating is a small little card that's within here. And something to note about this game is that we have to be very critical for this specific version because they hold racist and sexist stereotypes. 9 out of those 54 cards are characters and unfortunately do that. But this is where we kind of step in and we take control of our own narrative and we start to develop our own card and how we would like to be represented. Quick breakdown of the game is that I'll give you all sort of an idea of how to play this. Each player is given a tabla, which is your game board. And when you're given that tabla, a caller is then assigned. That caller will start to read out the cards, and your goal as a player is to keep track of the cards that they read. And you do that by tracking your tabla, and you can either use beans, sometimes we use coins, it's all up to you. And the goal of this is to fill up your entire tabla, and you yell out Buena or Lotería, and that's how you essentially win the game. Before we get started, I want us to explore a little bit of the art elements that exist within a Lotería card. And in a Lotería card, you have your number in the upper left corner, you have a name towards the bottom of the card, and you also have a foreground and a background. The foreground refers to the picture that's closest to the viewer and sometimes can appear larger and has the most detail. The background, this one doesn't really have one, but the background refers to the picture of the scene that's farthest from the viewer. So when we're creating our Lotería cards, I want us to keep these 4 elements in mind: your number, your name, your foreground, and your background. For this project, some of the materials that you'll need to create your Lotería card are cardstock paper, a glue stick or a hot glue gun, a ruler, scissors, a marker, a pencil, and your choice of either pipe cleaners, beans, or paper bags that you might have lying around. So now we'll get started on our art project. Before doing that, I want you all to sort of reflect on a word or the name of your Lotería card. And it's a little bit difficult when you ask someone to describe themselves in one word, right? So to do that, I'm gonna present sort of a guide to help you, and that'll be through an I am poem. So I'll go ahead and start the first phrase. I'll read out, and your job is to sort of fill in that blank. I am strong and creative. I wonder about my family. I hear the birds sing. I smell chilaquiles. I see the Watts Towers. I want a garden filled with food and flowers. I am strong and creative. I feel very grateful. I dream of peace. I love my community. I am strong and creative. So as I said before, I want you all to really take your time while you're writing this, and I want you to look at the beautiful, beautiful piece that you just wrote and select a word that really stands out to you that you feel really, really connected to. And for me, that'll be the Watts Towers. So for my choice of Lotería, my card name will be the Watts Towers. And I want you to take the time to look at your poem and select one word that you feel connected to. The card that I chose to do is based off of the Watts Towers. So I want to show you all an example of sort of the way that we're gearing towards. And so for my final product, here it is. We have our 4 elements. We have our number, our name, our foreground, and our background. So go ahead and grab your cardstock paper. This is your first material that you'll need. And don't be afraid to use a reference piece. If you really can't come up with it off the top of your head, I highly, highly encourage that. It's something that I always do. So go ahead and grab your cardstock paper, and we're gonna begin to sketch out our Watts Towers, or your choice of drawing. Okay, once you're done sketching out your picture or your character, whatever choice you decided to go with. I went ahead and did mine in pencil before making anything permanent. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab a Sharpie and outline my painting because I really want it to stand out, and because it's an architectural piece, we want to get all those little details. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and encourage you all to follow along. Okay, so once you have outlined your project in Sharpie, we are going to go ahead and begin to cut it out. However, if you would like to paint it, please go ahead and do so. The more detailed, the more beautiful your piece will be. We're going to begin to cut out our foreground. And I encourage you all to leave a little bit of a border around so that when you go ahead and lay it out into your background, it really pops out. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be aligned. I like to say the messier, the better it is. And there we have our foreground. Okay, for the next step, we won't be needing this quite yet, so we're gonna go ahead and put our foreground to the side. Step 3 will consist of creating our background. Now I want you to grab another fresh sheet of cardstock, and as I noted earlier, our Loteria cards have this border around them, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. And we're gonna measure 1/2 inch from each of the edges and go ahead and outline that. If you want directly with Sharpie, or if you want, you can go ahead and just use a pencil. So we're gonna go ahead and start to measure that out. So 1/2 inch. So now for this next step, I went ahead and outlined it in Sharpie and erased my pencil marks so that we have some clean, crisp lines. The next step in our background would be to select our number and to write down our name of our card. We want to do this beforehand so that when we start to layer our background, it doesn't overlap it and overshadow that. So we're gonna go ahead and grab a marker and we will begin to write our date. I want you to think of a number that might be special to you, maybe a birthday, maybe a lucky number that you may have. I'm going to go ahead and write my number, which is 9. And then my name in the traditional Loteria card, your name is towards the bottom here, so I'm going to do exactly that. So I'm going to name mine Watts Towers. There we have that. Now for this particular section of our background, we're going to bring in our foreground for just a second. And I want us to lay our foreground and we're gonna begin to outline it. And we want to create an outline because when we start to layer again our background, we don't want it to go into our foreground space. So go ahead and outline this. And it doesn't need to be harsh, it can be lightly because we are going to erase this. So we can move our foreground to the side. And so we have this piece. Now our job is to begin to sort of build a collage and mosaic around the piece. And I chose to do pipe cleaners. However, I want to show you on a quick example that it can also be done with anything that you might see lying around your house. I did a project where I grabbed old paper bags. I went ahead and cut it and painted them and then started to cut it up so that I could create different colors of paper here and the end product looked like this. So you can use paper bags, you can use construction paper, and as I said before, you can also use some beans to create your collage. Now this will require a little bit more hands-on because it is with a hot glue gun, but we'll get started with the pipe cleaners. You're gonna grab a bunch of pipe cleaners and we want these in a decent size, maybe around 2 inches tall, but I'm not gonna be precise with this. You're gonna go ahead and cut. Okay. We're gonna set these aside. And these won't glue down with a glue stick, so we're gonna go ahead and grab a hot glue gun and begin to glue our background. Make sure you do not put any within your outline because they're gonna be blocked off by your foreground. So we're gonna grab our glue gun and start to glue this down. Be very careful. Okay, so once you're done gluing down your background, you're gonna have something that looks like this, right? So everything is filled out except what we outlined in the center. Now, if you wanna go ahead and erase that outline that's sort of in the background so it doesn't show up once you begin to glue down your foreground, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to do this very lightly. Okay, so we have our background done. And I want to do a vocabulary check of what your background and your foreground are. So your foreground refers to the picture that's closest to the viewer, and your background refers to the one that's farthest from the viewer. Keep this in mind because now we're going to be adding our 3D element into our Loteria card. For the 3D pop-up effect, as you can see within the Loteria card, there's small pieces of construction cardstock in the background, and that's what we're going to build out. What you'll need is another sheet of cardstock, and we're going to measure those pieces of paper at 3 inches by 1 inch. So go ahead and grab a cardstock, and we're going to begin to draw out those strips because you're going to need to cut them out. And essentially what you'll come out with are these small little pieces of paper. So we're going to measure that out, 3 inches by 1 inch. So now that we're done creating our 3 inch by 1 inch strips, we're gonna go ahead and begin to cut these out. Depending how large your foreground is will depend how many small strips, what I like to call small accordions, that you'll need to put on the back of your foreground. So cut as many as you need or as little as you need. We're gonna go ahead and cut these out. Okay, so once you have all of those cut out, you're gonna end up with a bunch of little pieces of paper as I showed earlier. And a reminder, 3.5 by 1.5 inch. You can make them a little larger and that'll make your 3D effect a little bit, it'll pop out a little bit more. So we're gonna grab our cardstock paper and we're gonna fold this in thirds as best as possible. So you're gonna fold it in once, forward, and then you're gonna fold the other side to the back. So then you'll kind of have like this little zigzag pattern, like a little Z, and that's why I call them small accordions. So make as many as you need. For my foreground, I'm gonna make about 5. You wanna make sure that you're supporting your foreground as evenly as possible because you don't want the center to go in. So a quick tip would be to hit every corner and the center. So we're gonna go ahead and fold up 5 of these for my foreground. And that's 5 small accordions. So now we're gonna go ahead and piece together the final step of our Loteria card, which is combining our foreground and our background. So I'll go ahead and bring those in. And we are going to use our foreground. Go ahead and flip it towards the back, and we're gonna grab our glue stick. And what we're going to do is essentially glue all of these to our foreground here. So like I said, we wanna do each corner and the center. And I would advise you to place them all facing the same direction. This will be easier once you attach your foreground and your background. So go ahead and start to glue these down. And you want to add a little bit of pressure in there. Okay, so we have all 5 accordions glued down to our foreground. And we're gonna now add glue to these back sides so that we can glue it onto our background here. So go ahead and add a little bit of glue to each one. And we're gonna go ahead and flip it over. And you're gonna place this into your background, sort of like a puzzle where it best fits and aligns into your background. So go ahead and place it down. And what you're gonna do is add a little bit of pressure so that that glue sticks to the background. And once you feel like it's okay, go ahead and tug on it slightly so that it pops up just a little bit. And that's it. You'll have your completed Loteria card. I'm gonna go ahead and raise this so that we can see that 3D pop-up effect into your Loteria. and look at the beautiful pieces that you all just made. I want you all to take a quick note that this is sort of a way for us to reclaim our stories, to go ahead and choose to be represented the way that we want to be represented. And you should all be very, very proud of your creative pieces here. And I encourage you all to continue to create your own Loteria cards and invite family and your friends to develop it, because the more cards that you have, eventually you'll be able to develop your own entire Loteria game and play with your own version. So thank you all for being here today, and I encourage all of you to share your art pieces using the hashtag UCLA VAPAE, and can't wait to see your pieces. Thank you.